As you know, the main function of our FORZA solder is the welding process, creating these weld beads on different materials like black steel, stainless steel, and aluminum. However, it has three other functions. Today, we're going to be looking at the topic of cleaning. Well, first of all, let's talk a little about this machine and the laser it uses, and how it manages to do this job. The first thing to understand is that this gun is special. When you're going to use the cleaning system or the cleaning function, you have to change out this kit. In this kit, we have a different nozzle and also a different lens. What the lens basically does is change the shape of the light. Secondly, you also need to understand that this gun, unlike some other guns, comes with a galvanometric lens system. What does this mean? It means that inside, it has a mirror that is able to move the light beam in such a way that it creates a fan shape. This function is essential when I'm going to use cleaning systems. Our FORZA solder is equipped with 1,500 watts. That's the power of our laser, of our resonator, the gas we specifically need for the cleaning function. Well, in this case, we have argon. When we're going to work with this remote cleaning function, the gun will be about 30 centimeters away, and at that distance, the argon, as it comes out, will mix with the air. So it doesn't really make much sense to use argon for this application. We're going to use compressed air, obviously because it's easier and, above all, because of the cost. We often get asked, hey, up to what thickness can a welding machine clean? And well, that's a bit of an ambiguous question. Why? Because the laser is a 1064 nanometer laser. Let's remember that the function of the laser is to interact with materials through energy absorption. This means that some materials absorb energy faster than others. For example, chrome is reflective or has a very low level of energy absorption, unlike carbon. So, depending on the material or the difference in finish that we have on our sample, we'll be able to create this cleaning effect if the oxide layer is just dust that hasn't really settled in too strongly yet. I'll be able to clean it. But if this oxide layer is already a solid oxide, like it's fused with the piece and maybe it's been there for years, then cleaning will be a bit more difficult. And without further ado, let's change the setup to have our gun ready for cleaning. Now, what's next is to select the cleaning function on our touch controller. Here we have the four functions. We have the welding function, the cutting function, the bead cleaning function, which uses a special nozzle, and the function we're testing now, which is the remote function. We select OK. Before starting the process, let's not forget about safety measures. First of all, our safety glasses to protect our eyes, and also the protective mask. With just 20% of the total power, we are able to achieve super fast and efficient cleaning. Obviously, the surface ends up with this fine dust that comes off from the rust and oxidation, and I'm going to try with another camera angle, although the entire process is really quite quick. Now I'm going to increase the power setting to 600 watts, or 40% of the machine's full capacity. I'm going to make the fan a little wider. We'll work with an 8 centimeter wide fan to see how quickly and effectively we can clean a face in this particular example. I want to see if we can thoroughly clean this side in a single continuous pass. I think for this specific type of oxidation, we can easily work with just 20% of the immense power of our 1500W machine. Now let's continue our examination with this particular plate, which is significantly more rusted. And here we clearly observe a layer of rust that's a bit more firmly stuck to the plate's surface, almost as if it were completely fused together with the metal. It looks like magic, really, almost as if you had a kind of brush that gently cleans away this rust, which is usually pretty hard to remove with sanding methods. That's one of the big advantages of having a cleaner. All right, here I can see the result and, well, I want you to take a look at this. Since the layer is so thick, when I move it with my hand, obviously wearing gloves because this can also be harmful to the skin, the layer of rust reappears. So, the recommendation I would make when dealing with materials that are really rusted is to do an initial cleaning, then use a small brush to remove all the dust that's been generated and left on the surface, so you can continue with further cleaning processes. Now I'm going to clean the second side, well, this section on the right side, and I'm going to use 50% of the power of the device. You can see how the laser was stronger, so now let's give it one last cleaning. I think 50% is enough until it gets clean. And look at this beauty, we now have our plate clean, the one that had the thickest layer of oxidation. We only used 50% of the laser power. It's a bit hot, that's for sure, but you can't even tell the difference anymore. It's nothing like what we started with. Now it's ready to move on to a welding process, a painting process, or whatever process we need, since rust usually gets in the way and makes it impossible to do. And now let's continue with this lift. This lift, well, it's coated with electrostatic paint. I'm going to turn it up to 50%. With just 50% power, we've already managed to effectively remove the paint, demonstrating the initial capability of the equipment. However, as you observed, with a slight, almost imperceptible assistance from my hand, the paint was indeed on the verge of coming off completely, but I meticulously finished peeling away the remaining stubborn bits. Now, I am genuinely eager to see and understand what precisely happens if we escalate the power significantly and utilize the full 1500 watts. The initial results are pretty good. In fact, I really like the impressive outcome we achieved on this particular layer of paint. I think, considering the efficiency and the speed in terms of the time investment, we could quite easily and thoroughly clean this entire piece in approximately 8 to 10 minutes at the absolute maximum, ensuring it is completely spotless. Let's proceed to finish cleaning this lift entirely before we transition and move on to the main structure. And specifically on this very last piece, I intend to meticulously time the process. I want to precisely find out and document exactly how long it takes us to achieve a thorough cleaning. We are going to meticulously clean half of the structure to truly ascertain, in a practical, actual job scenario, how long it would realistically take me, especially if, of course, the specific application was to become my primary and main task. I'm going to incrementally turn up the power by another 30% to make the entire cleaning process a bit faster and more efficient. Consequently, we successfully managed to clean half of one side of this completely and heavily rusted structure. I estimate it took us approximately 3 minutes to accomplish this. The dedicated production team will undoubtedly provide us with the exact and precise working time, but what I truly want you to notice and appreciate is this remarkable and significant difference in the cleaning efficacy and speed. It looks like it has a layer of paint. If you look here, you can see the color of the rusted part once we've cleaned it. In this section, we can clearly see the color of the black steel, and it's spectacular. And to finish, we're going to do a test on a piece that's painted but completely new. This is one of the parts from one of our fiber machines that's used for, but supporting the screen had a significant manufacturing defect. So I'm going to try to carefully remove the electrostatic paint. I'll see what precise effect it has on the work in vibrant red, deep black, and pure white. Since the laser has a specific wavelength of 1064 nanometers, it reacts quite differently not only on various materials but also on distinct colors. And here we can clearly see the noticeable differences in the laser's effect on these different colors. Obviously, black has a much higher level of light absorption. In fact, in some cases black isn't even truly considered a color, because basically black is the complete absence of light. Black has the characteristic of absorbing all light, of reflecting almost no wavelength, and that's why it has its color. That means it's going to absorb more of this laser, this light, and therefore it's going to heat up more easily. That's why we see that black has the greatest cleaning effect, unlike red and white. Red would be next, and white does the opposite of black. It reflects all wavelengths, which is why it's a bit harder for us to clean white. Let's keep removing a bit more paint. Alright, and that's all for today, working with our FORZA solder in its remote cleaning function, which is quite impressive. We've seen the quality of work it can do with relatively light, medium, and heavy types of rust. I think the most difficult thing, and here's our first conclusion, the most difficult thing is removing white electrostatic paint. It usually uses colors with light or pale tones, which will refract the light. If we have a piece that's brown, red, or black, it's going to be much easier to remove that electrostatic paint. Number 2, the laser has enough power to evaporate almost any material. However, to achieve an optimal cleaning system, it's recommended to do a first pass, then clean it by hand with a brush, as you saw, to remove all those particles left on the surface, and then continue with a deep cleaning. I can also do it without this manual cleaning, just with the gun, but that will take longer and also make the piece heat up more. Number 3, work cycles. This beautiful machine can work 24/7. It doesn't need to take any breaks. Thank you, since it has a chiller, a cooling system to keep the source at room temperature. You know that this type of application is super important for saving the operator's time. What's the other alternative? Well, doing it with sandpaper, which is unthinkable, not just because of the operator's time, but also because there are small areas that become inaccessible. And that's where the laser becomes an ideal option, not just in terms of convenience, but also cost. And believe it or not, this machine peaks at 8,500 watts, but on average it runs at about 4,500 watts when working continuously, less than what a regular household electric shower would use, just so you have an idea. You don't even need a 3-phase installation, since our 1,500 and 2,000 watt models come configured for single-phase 220. And that's all for today. If you want to see more features of this beautiful machine, we have a presentation video where you can see all the functions in detail. Let us know in the comments what other materials you'd like us to test with this welder for cleaning, and we'll see you soon in the next video. Bye!